Hi there, this is Richard Ryan.
My name is Garrett Shafton-Uri.
The High Low Bro Show episode 8 features Harakiri and colors.
There are a few things in my life that I love more than samurai movies, and I was trying to figure out what to watch late one night, as I often am, and I came across a mention of this, and I started to watch it. The next thing that I knew, it was 2:30 in the morning. So I basically lost an entire night to Harakiri, and I very happily lost that night.
And it's not that it's in the shadow of a Kurosawa or an Ozu or these major Mizoguchi, these huge Japanese filmmakers of the middle century. I sort of feel like our filmmaker today, Masaki Kobayashi, he's not forgotten. He's done important work, but he's not considered as commercially important or as well known, let's say, despite having his work put on the Criterion Collection with nice pressed Blu-rays, being put out on their streaming service and so on. Long and short is, I was impressed with this movie.
Even if this were the only film that Kobayashi had made, he would still be in the annals of great Japanese filmmakers, because it is such a fine film within this particular samurai period genre.
The story begins in 1619 when a samurai called Hanshiro Sugumo, that's Tetsuya Nakadai, he's riding high. He's got a baby, or not a baby, he's got an 11-year-old daughter. He's a widower, and he's got a bestie, and his best friend is a widower also with an older boy. And things seem to be okay. They can see that their children are eventually going to match, marry, and be dispatched into adulthood. But then their lord, who they serve, is summarily dismissed, and they lose their jobs. They become Ronin. Right. Then we watch in sequence through the course of months and then several years, up to 1630, which is where it concludes. We watch as Hanshiro loses his best friend Janae to seppuku. That is, he opens himself up with Harakiri and kills himself, asking his friend Hanshiro to look after his boy. This corresponds with a whole bunch of Ronin being let loose from a whole bunch of feudal houses because of the shogunate and how it was all organized in this period of Japan. So a lot of men who were very skilled at warcraft become lost. And our boy Hanshiro is looking after both his daughter and the son of his best friend. Eventually, of course, the son and the daughter, they marry. They have a baby. Matome, to raise funds and try to secure some measure of security for his family, was hoping he would be bribed out of committing Harakiri at a particular lord's house. Harakiri is the opening of the bowel to let everything spill out, and then the beheading for ritualistic purposes, either for the demise of a samurai who wants to die gloriously, for somebody who is getting a comeuppance as punishment, or somebody who is trying to square a wrong done in their life. This all goes wrong with the way that Matome decides to commit Harakiri, leaving behind his wife and their child. They soon die, and vengeance is planted in our boy Hanshiro's mind. Eventually, he goes to the same house, asking for the same privilege, but then he goes to war with his family, kills a bunch of its retainers, finally commits Harakiri, and the whole thing is washed over in a gigantic public relations smear, because this feudal house cannot have itself blighted by the truth of its own corruption.
Kobayashi here, he's doing a lot of very interesting socio-political things. One is that he's referencing a period between the demise of the Sengoku shogunate and the rise of the Tokugawa. Japanese speakers out there, please, if our pronunciations are less than perfect,
please don't lop off our heads,
please don't, or chop off our arms and legs.
Right.
So the rise of the Tokugawa Edo shogunate becomes this very, very important, long, stable period from about 1615 or so, when this movie is set, to the late 19th century, when the West shows up and
brings their ways, right,
and
disrupts
the whole Meiji restoration and so forth. And and Tom Cruise shows up.
Yeah, right.
And so,
right, Ken Watanabe
right.
commits Harakiri on the battlefield because of cannon fire. Yeah,
right, exactly. So, but what we in the West associate with this particular period is actually a relatively small amount of period where an older shogunate/dynasty was breaking up, and for a while there were all these guys, these so-called Ronin, right? And we actually have an American film called Ronin, right?
Frankenheimer, yeah.
Right, exactly. We have absorbed so much of Japanese history into our popular culture that we talk about samurai and we talk about Ronin without actually knowing what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's very similar to another period of time that you and I have discussed, which is that transition between the Old South and
Reconstruction,
the antebellum South, and the post Civil War South, the Western Plains Indian Wars, and a period of time that also gets mythologized in the same way. So that when we take Seven Samurai, right? Which I suspect is set more or less in the same period of time because it's about free-floating samurai who no longer are retainers of the local
bonded
lords.
to each other because they don't have a daimyo to work for.
They don't have a daimyo to work for.
Right.
Exactly like the gunfighters in The Magnificent Seven, which of course is directly lifted from Seven Samurai.
And we're not talking about Fuqua's version, which is garbage.
I haven't even watched it.
Yeah,
I won't. Thank you for saving several hours of my life.
Yes. Hazard sign here.
There is this anarchic and very warlike period where the individual, in the case of Japan, it's these Ronin, these lordless samurai who go on these kind of weird quests or missions.
Yeah.
And in America, it's these unaffiliated, often ex-Confederate
soldiers,
like our friend Josey Wales,
right?
Who
he's looking for a cause to use all this awesome killing power that he's amassed across his life.
And so what we see is we see a bonding of these two genres, the American Western and the Japanese samurai film. And I think one of the things that I enjoyed a lot about Harakiri is that I really was thinking about those historical resonances of all of that.
There's a couple of things that plug into my experience of this movie. This is a story of people with excellent trade skills that have been completely made obsolescent through the course of their society, but they're still virile and young enough to be useful, except they're not anymore. They are purposefully driven from the craft they have honed across their lives. These samurai are capable of a specific thing. They're the Navy SEALs of their time. You all who have devoted yourself to sword and arrow, you're not necessary. But yet you're only 35 or 40 years old. And in the case of our lead character here, Ishirō, he's caring for a child. So he really can't just go back to college or its equivalent in the 1600s. What he does is warcraft. His entire way of life has been, in an instant, removed.
Right.
And that's powerful stuff to consider because it is something that goes on. And it does seem to go on in masculine culture periodically and generationally. And this is an incidence where feudal Japan has, in a way, decided that there's no need to have these warriors among us. Yet there are so many of them.
Well, when we say that feudal Japan has decided, what's happened is that feudal Japan in the years, and it's literally in the year 1600, when the Battle of Sejigahara, if I'm saying it right, occurred, and the old shogunate was overthrown. It's a moment of transition and centralization. So all the local feudal lords in old Japan,
they're gobbled up.
They're gobbled up,
yeah.
and they no longer have the literally no longer have the financial ability to support their samurai retainers, and so now you have these men who are very, very skilled. How many? I mean, Outlaw Josey Wales would be a great example, but what about First Blood? This character, the wandering, disenfranchised samurai, the Ronin, occurs again and again and again in American movies. And the bureaucracy that's replaced the old war. Do you know what else follows this model exactly? Is Gladiator.
it's a wonderful archetypal role for a kind of fallen man.
Right.
What's clutch and key, and it comes through in the performance of this actor Nakadai Tatsuya. He's vigorous and young, and he's handsome. This is no 70-year-old who's a doddering old guy using a cane. And so we watch this young guy, and I realize young needs to be put in scare quotes. I've got kids who make me feel daily old, but the fact is, until you truly are incapable of controlling your bowels or moving, you're young enough to do things. And this is a guy who's truly capable, and he's put to pasture well before his time. And there are notes made across the course of the movie, which I did a little bit of outside research to learn. There was something like 300 or 400 different feudal lords across the whole of Japan, all of them holding as retainers these samurai. Mm-hmm. And all of them were spun loose when this particular shogunate came to power, which means that you're thinking about brigade-level samurai thrown to the wind. I've witnessed a couple of recessions in my time. And I've watched a lot of capable people lose jobs, and it's not because they have a failing or fault. And in fact, our boy Henshiro says, through no fault of our own, our lord lost his land and we're cast off into poverty. And when he says this, you think, damn it, that sucks. That's just miserable. What a terrible way to live.
This is a recurrent film in what we might call the narrative of the post-war warrior, where you have these men who were trained to and were very good at being
one thing.
And then they find themselves in a social situation where that's completely meaningless in political skills and being a bureaucrat.
Well, yeah, another thing that comes out of this, and of course, this I think will connect us to colors. Mm-hmm. What is the code that you were trying to uphold?
Bushido!
Yeah.
Bushido, the blade! Right, exactly. That's
Who are you going to protect? Right. Who earns your respect? Who deserves it? And who needs to be punished? And punishment is really valuable to both movies. Now, here's a little note just to sort of drop in the room before we'll eventually get to colors. But one of the connective bits of tissue that I see between these two movies is the fact that our guy, Ishirō Sugumo, is working on the notion of how you produce and live to a code that you fully understand. And everybody around you gives lip service to this code. But when that code is violated, what do you do about it? If I pursue rightness and understand what that is and do nothing but relentlessly pursue and punish those who violate it,
the wrongdoers,
I will create a good society.
Right.
Going back then to an attractive moment or an aspect of Harakiri that I have not yet said. The movie, while I tried to express it in a linear fashion, it's hard to do because the movie is not expressed in a linear fashion.
And in this way, it's linked to Rashomon, which I think is...
Absolutely, and that was 12 years before, right.
Right, but he's clearly watched Rashomon and said, telling a non-linear narrative is a way to create all kinds of tension and suspense. I think that one of the things that Kobayashi does so remarkably in this film is build up suspense, because you're not quite sure until the very end why Suguma, our hero, is actually doing what he's doing and why he's decided to...
You're not clear what he's already done before he shows up at the gates of his daimyo to say, I want to commit Harakiri and I know what that means. Let me tell you a story before I do it.
And there's a particularly gruesome thing that he's done. It's up there kind of with...
Go off, man. He brings top knots to the party and says, I've defeated my foe who made my stepson do terrible things to himself.
It's like the moment at the end of 7.
It is. Don't look in the box.
Don't look in the box. Right?
Don't do it.
You want to see your late pregnant wife's head in the box. That's just been delivered by...
What's in the box? Brad Pitt screams and Morgan Freeman says, don't look in the box. Yeah, it's exactly that. When it finally jumps... It's
a moment so gruesome, and then the film only gets more gruesome. Turns into a total gore fest.
Yeah.
And on a scale so grand that apparently Japanese censors and movie distributors actually had some problems with it.
This movie was released in Japan in September '62, opposite titles like King Kong vs. Godzilla and the tale of Zatoichi, at least the first time through on both of those titles.
King Kong Godzilla being a masterpiece of its kind. Yeah.
That was what it was being seen in its natal audience, but it didn't get wide distribution until we enter the Cannes Film Festival of May '63, when it loses the Palme d'Or to The Leopard and competes for that award with This Sporting Life and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And then later in the year, it gets released again at the New York Film Festival against The Exterminating Angel and Autumn Afternoon by Ozu, Knife in the Water by Polanski, Roga Paggi, which is a magazine-style movie by Roberto Rossellini, Ugo Gregoretti, Gianluca Dara, and Pier Paolo Pasolini, which I honestly had never heard of before doing this research. And it finally gets a commercial release in the United States in August of '64, meaning almost 2 years after native Japanese people watch this movie, it shows up against The Pawnbroker, A Hard Day's Night, Marnie, and The Gospel According to St. Matthew. Why am I saying all of this? In this moment of the middle and early 1960s, the Code Administration that had been administering censorship patterns across American movies was being crippled by imported movies from Asia, from Africa, from parts of Europe. Now, spoiler. This movie,
Harakiri... Americans who want to watch films that are from outside, that are produced and made outside the United States that violate some of their basic code strictures. And
right.
So
they would be not rated and released without the stamp of whatever the Catholic Legion of Decency would say is okay, or the MPAA. And eventually,
which drives movie distributors wild, because
people are going to turn out for this stuff. And I have to tell you, you mentioned to me having seen this movie before I did and said, you got to watch this, we're going to talk about it. So I did. Yeah. It's so bloody when it jumps off. Like, wow, this is fully 60 years ago. And the gore it's not, horror movie in contemporary America level horror to today's moment, because it's black and white.
It's not quite, no. It's
you
not,
understand
what's
going on.
Massacre,
no, it's not
but the only filmmaker of this period that I can think who is similarly able to suggest just physical body-oriented horror on the same level is Hitchcock.
Yeah,
who I think is clearly an influence.
Because he's done by this point he's done Psycho. He's about to do The Birds, which overlaps with. He releases Marnie the same time.
There you go.
And these are pretty brutal movies, which give rise to the change in they give rise to the MPAA in 1968 to establish a different pattern of what we would now recognize as ratings.
Right.
Overall, then, I mean to say that this movie is one, achronological, non-linear, to a non-Japanese speaker, i.e. this guy Garrett. It took about 20 minutes to realize this guy talking to me on the screen is talking to me from 1619 in the story's design. Oh, in the next scene, it's 1630. In the middle scene, it's 1626. And it takes a little bit of work to put these motions in order.
Just the way that knowing a lot about mid to late 19th century American history enhances your experience of things like The Searchers, like the outlaw Josey Wales.
Right.
I think knowing something about this period of Japanese medieval history enhances your experience. I think a Japanese audience watching this, they're actually very interested in the historical, the dimensions of Japanese history. I mean, we're talking in 1962 about Japanese, almost all of whom, I mean, if you're older than 17,
you
are
survived
alive in
the
World
war.
You survived an incredibly violent war. You're living in the only country that's ever had a nuclear bomb dropped on it. And well before we got involved in 1941, the Japanese had been in a war for 20 years. And then there's the Russian-Japanese war at the turn of the century before this. Suddenly, under the MacArthurian American protectorate post-war, suddenly you're forced to become a nation of businessmen and accountants, right? And you have probably a very low standard of living, and your
daily struggle is for food. Your daily struggle is for shelter. It's for security.
Just for livelihood. Now you're watching this film about a man who's from this heroic period in Japanese history.
Much mythologized.
Much mythologized, already captured in globally acknowledged masterpieces like Seven Samurai. You go, wow, I'm just sitting here in my businessman suit, and I'm watching what it would have been like to be a dispossessed samurai, a Ronin, and have to try and take revenge for these really horrible things that have been done to my family.
So
right?
let me jump on that horrible things thing for a moment, because one of the really important details that makes this engine work is that Hanshiro is avenging the loss of his adopted son Matomi. The thing about Matomi's death is when he asks for the ritual of Harakiri. It's quite a ritual. All of the retainers are asked to witness this thing. He asks for a pause so he can tie up his affairs, and he is refused this pause. In this back and forth narrative style, we learn the reasons for that across the movie's length. He has a dying child. He has a wife he needs to explain things to. He has an adoptive father. He needs to express why he's done things. But pivotally, along the way of trying to care for this sick child and this young wife, he has pawned his samurai steel, his short sword and his long sword, to now have only bamboo utensils that he is made to use to murder himself. So when I know this is coming, because they've made fun of his blades, they want to make an example of him, he nonetheless is proud enough of his tradition and his sense of honor to follow through. But you watch this guy place a bamboo blade on gravel in front of him over a ceremonial mattress, more or less, and spear himself in an effort to carve out his guts. And we're very clear on what's happening. We don't see loops of intestine. This is not yet Wes Craven in The Last House on the Left, but we're not left to imagine anything. In long takes, we watch the suffering. Wow, it causes me to pause in drinking my water while watching this movie. And this sense of this daimyo violating this man's privilege and right to commit this act with a sense of sobriety and respect turned into this, shit show. It's just awful.
The daimyo and the retainers who are basically publicly humiliating this young man who is not himself a samurai. He's never fought in a battle.
He's been raised in the tradition.
He was raised in the tradition. His late father was apparently a great samurai. His adopted father was, and as we discover, remains a very great samurai. And he's trying to live out the tradition. And the only thing that he can think to do to save his dying child and wife is to seppuku con game, is to kind of convince these people out of pity.
It's a game of chicken. Will you actually do it, or do you want to be purchased? You want to be bought off? We'll give you some money and go for it. And of course, they're done with this drill. We're going to make you do it.
They have a lot of sport with him. There's this really sadistic sort of bullying attitude of the whole thing, and they're really curious about how far they can push him, and then when they've decided they pushed him far enough, they actually want to see him kill himself in a really terrible and disgraceful way.
When the movie finally flattens out and we get an understanding of how all of these story strands are put together, what we have is Hanshiro sitting on that same ceremonial Harakiri mattress, asking for a particular man to be his second, the man who will lop off his head after he is self-disemboweled. Each of the men he requests were involved in actually humiliating Hitomi, and Hanshiro knows he's dispatched them before he ever arrived. As we're watching all of this happen on this hot summer day, we're listening to him describe what he intends, what he hopes for, what his oath, what his code is. And he keeps saying to the retainers of this household, you need to listen to me. You need to think for yourself and understand what you're doing and why. Because he realizes the bankruptcy, the cultural bankruptcy of these daimyo feudal lords above him are giving lip service to the code he has literally offering his life to, and they don't believe it for a moment.
No, and he says explicitly, he says, if you don't honor my request, if you don't give me a chance to tell my story and give me the honor that's due me as a samurai, you're just proving that the samurai code is a lie and bogus. And for Japanese, in 1962, having gone through this entire war where they were told, we will defeat
everything,
the Americans. We will defeat the Russians.
Our God Emperor will lead us to victory.
Right. That message must have resonated at a devastating level. They must have just said, "Wow, my father died on Okinawa. He died on Okinawa. He died in the Philippines, and it was all for nothing. It was for a false code that doesn't really exist."
And this guy, Kobayashi, this filmmaker. He himself had served in the war, and I think he was eventually placed in an isolated unit to defend the homeland, and I think he became a prisoner of war that the Russians captured him and his unit when the war finally foreclosed Japanese aggression and then concluded with the atomic bomb blasts. He had come to fame within the last 5 to 10 years before 62 with The Human Condition.
Right.
I've never seen it. It's a one-day marathon
Yeah.
of, I think, 3 separate movies, which is it's an autobiographical story of a man who goes to war because he must, but then tries to not be involved in war because he doesn't believe in it. So we watch all of that come true in the course of this movie, and I think the glib note that gets people interested in, it's a samurai movie. There will be swordplay. There is.
That's the reason
right.
why I watched it.
And
I will watch anything that tells me that says that it's got samurai in it, and it's a great film. So,
and we also watched this one badass samurai, Hanshiro Sugumo, just take apart the retainers of this daimyo house that has wronged him and his family. But man, he's punished. He's hacked to pieces. He's bleeding out, and in the end, he uses his longsword to gut himself. And then to add a sort of a note, a really specific note, because we referenced Tom Cruise and The Last Samurai earlier. He's in the end dispatched by 3 riflemen, impersonal and from a distance. And then the whole of it is swept into this bookend structure that the overall narrative is mapped to, which is the notes taken by the scribe of this lord's house. We never see the lord. He's always off screen. Mm-hmm. It's the counselor who does the lord's affairs, writing the notes of the day, who deliberately explains that I am going to scrub clean what actually happened here and just say all of these men died of illness. And this Ronin came to us and requested the rights of Harakiri, which were granted honorably.
We treated him honorably.
Right.
And it is so much a... cynical is not the right word. It's genuinely tragic. There's that big cognitive dissonance between who you think you are in whatever cultural context you think you're in and what the culture actually is. And Sugumo's mockery of the samurai code, which, as you discover at the very end, he embodies as much as it's possible to embody.
Right. There's this whole idea about transitioning into the next life, which is visited throughout the movie in really rigorous ways. A technical note. One of the things that pleased me about this movie, again, this is 60 years ago, the camera doesn't move a lot, but when it does, it expresses a lot of visual information. Because very often there are tracking shots that are done perhaps 2 feet off the ground of watching this Harakiri ritual, which is basically a bamboo mattress set up over a gravel garden in a courtyard, surrounded by the rooms of this estate.
And Yoshio Mijima, this is the cinematographer
right.
who I'm calling out, Yoshio Mijima. Almost all critics of this film talk about how beautifully photographed it is, the tracking shots, the very architectural sense of human bodies sitting very still, often just cross-legged and not moving at all, among columns and with various kinds of screens.
It involves perfectly divided spaces.
Yeah.
The counselor, Kaguya Saito, that's Rantaru Mikuni, the actor.
The actor, yeah.
He will periodically leave the courtyard to consult with his trusted seconds to ask what's really happening here. Right. And when they go off into their side rooms to deal with that, as you point out, there are columns that divide. One character is in the middle, one is on the right, one is on the left, one is close to us, one is farther away. And it's this perfect triptych once the camera settles on them. And of course, these performers, they do what they're meant to do. Eventually, when this becomes a more kinetic movie and we watch the fight as Hanshiro breaks down walls and is forced to defend himself, and he warns them all.
If you do not honor my honorable request, yes, you will
I will commit pain.
But I'm going to take a lot of you with me, which
he does.
Which in fact, he does. He wreaks massive havoc.
But there's also an understanding that all of these men who he's fighting, none of them, in a sense, matter because they're not the decision makers of the new bureaucracy, and he knows it too.
They're company men, and that's how I think a lot of Japanese businessmen watching this film must have thought, "Oh God, I'm just one of those."
I'm Ensign Smith. I'm going to beam to the surface with Captain.
I know you're a red shirt.
There are occasional uses of a canted angle. In particular, there is a fight sequence where Hanshiro is invited by this rival, Hikokoru, who was involved in humiliating his adopted son Motomi. And they wander through a cemetery. They wander out to a grassy sward where they're going to engage in swordcraft.
Right.
Well, Hikokoru is not an experienced sword fighter. And our guy Hanshiro realizes I can use the wind and the elements to my advantage. We learn this after the fact. But while this is happening, we watch the camera cant to see that outstretched sword take up a diagonal across the whole frame, which is a really exciting thing to do, especially when it's matched. One guy pointed left, one guy pointed right with an interesting pose as they clash with one another. And of course, we know what the outcome will inevitably be, which is the winning of our hero as he cuts down this foe. This movie exhibits a great deal of cinematographic technique and craft outdoors and in. That is, in a controlled studio environment, or one that's like a studio, because it's got this courtyard feel, which you can control the weather. And they're out in the wind.
There's just this sea of grass around them that's kind of gently wavering like a Van Gogh painting. And there are these two big guys with really big swords whacking away at each other. And I think it's one of the things that makes that fight scene so unbelievably dramatic. You're just like, oh, wait. That's right. I originally watched this movie
because it's a sword fight.
Because I wanted to see samurai whacking
It took a while to get to the sword fight, but then it lands.
That's
and it's quite good. One other craft-based or technical note that really pleased me was the composer for this thing, Takemitsu Toru. This movie music punctuates a mood, and it leaves me alone with the quiet of natural sound, of the clanging of the occasional sword, of people walking on gravel.
It's not Elmer Bernstein.
No, it's not.
It's not a furious whirl of strings. It creates various spaces for the characters to inhabit.
Let's turn to colors. Richard, I want you to imagine that important first romantic relationship of your life. I'm thinking about mine. And I brought that first romantic partner to see Colors in the theater, probably in late April 1988, thinking it would be a terrific date movie. We were also tasked with bringing along her best friend, so it was a trio. Later in the summer of 1988, we had a family vacation where some slightly younger male cousins of mine had gotten an audio tape copy of the soundtrack album for this movie that we played ritualistically to the point of annoyance with all of our parents. It was like we're going to listen to Mom's Dolly Parton.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living.
We're going to listen to some Joan Rivers.
Last night I said to my husband, what's your favorite sexual position? He said next door.
But we're going to listen to Colors again.
Color.
The relationship I'm describing lasted a bit longer than that summer. I don't know how she tolerated me. But that was my idea at age 15 of going on a terrific date night.
And you think she judged you harshly?
I assume that's right. Maybe she'd have a different point of view. Maybe it's completely forgotten to her.
Well, let me say two things about this. First of all, when I went to see Colors, which was, I think, if not the week that it opened, close to the week that it opened, I went to see it with the woman who I dated off and on for most of my 20s, who was a huge Sean Penn fan. So that alone was a draw. I'll just add as a footnote, the very first film that I went to with a date, I was 16, this was in San Francisco. Justine Jensen and I went to see Fellini's Casanova.
Man, you can think of...
It was... And Justine, if you're still out there someplace, write me.
Swing, 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 swing.
This is yet another story about men enforcing the rules that men make in order to describe what is correct good behavior and what is not. And what is good is celebrated and defended, and what is not is punished.
In both cases, it's two men, right? And in the case of Harakiri, it's the father and the adopted son. In the case of Colors, it's the older and the younger police officer. And their relationship with the other men around them, which is sometimes sympathetic, sometimes extremely hostile. Both sets of characters are trying to work out their social situation in these very complicated and very violent environments that require you to follow certain codes that may or may not be clearly spelled out, and in fact may not be what they claim to be.
So Hodges, Officer Bob Hodges, that's Robert Duvall. God bless Robert Duvall.
Oh my God.
One of the great actors of American cinema, full stop. He is an approaching retirement LAPD cop who's worked his way out the beat, but he's never left the streets. He's still a boy in blue in a patrol car. He is tasked with helping Officer Danny Pac-Man McGavin, that's Sean Penn,
Right.
learn these mean streets to effectively replace him once he does retire. We learn that Hodges has a place somewhere in the valley with a wife and young children. We learn that McGavin's a fella on the make, and he's trying to learn the rules of maturity. There's a sequence relatively early in the piece when McGavin runs down some street criminals through alleyways, and they're part of East Los Angeles that they are policing. They're boys. I think they're all teenagers.
And McGavin is kind of brutal with these.
He
kids.
roughs them up. He punches them out.
Yeah.
He subdues them physically.
And Hodges tells him not to do that. Hodges calls him off.
Uncuff him. Uncuff him. You heard me. I'm Hodges. Ask around who I am, all right?
Yeah.
You owe me one, okay?
Yeah.
Got that?
Yes, sir.
Say it.
I owe you one.
Okay. Get out of here. All right, this alley is hot. It's no longer yours, it's mine. If I catch you here again, I'm going to arrest you. Be straight with me, I'll be straight with you. Now, you get lost. Let's go. Come on. Out.
And McGavin's like, they've broken the law. No way. No way.
Hodges sees himself as a peacekeeper. I mean, I think one of the things that's great about Colors is it starts this conversation about law enforcement versus peacekeeping.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And McGavin sees himself as an enforcer.
Mm-hmm.
As if you're dealing drugs, I'm going to stop you from doing this. Hodges sees himself as a peacekeeper, that
right.
I'm going to try.
This society exists whether I'm here or not.
Sure.
If it's midnight and people need to sleep, I need to keep it quiet.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an afternoon and there's a party afoot celebrating 3-year-olds getting a birthday, well, then just keep that peaceful. Don't need violence. Just keep everybody cool.
Right.
Because in the end, he's a pension-earning public servant who wants to go home to his family, and these people that I am involved with trying to peacekeep, they're not my tribe. I think that idea of tribalism, for me, that term didn't make any sense whatsoever until I entered young adulthood. And then I began to notice how I was voluntarily a member of certain tribes, irrespective of my race or ethnic background, largely through affiliation, a club of similar interests where you sign up or agree to tasks because these are people like me. They reflect my behaviors and interests. That's the kind of tribe that I became involved with. What we watched in this movie is Hodges helping McGavin realize there are tribes of people, and no matter what you do, you may not be able to affiliate purposefully with people you think are similar because you have the same skin color, you have the same educational background, you live in the same neighborhood. There are different tribes that cut against all of that. This is a police.
They're not just that, but see that's I think one of those questions that the film puts so interestingly into play. Okay, if it's not your skin color, if it's not the language that you speak, if it's not your socioeconomic standing, if it's not your job, it doesn't even get close to the question of gender because
that's off the table.
It's a dude film.
Yeah,
right? It is kind of a dude.
Women
film,
are
right?
objects; they are trophies.
It's about various kinds of social groupings in a male hierarchy, and I think the film does a really good job of kind of throwing that up in the air and saying it may not be clear. You know, Hodges basically is a good cop, right?
Right.
And McGavin, you go, is he going to be a good cop? Or there are other characters in the film who are clearly bad cops. And
he's not one of them because
no.
he's questioning and worrying and thinking about these considerations.
McGavin is, and you feel caught up and concerned with him. He falls in love with a Hispanic
Luisa
American.
Gomez.
So yeah,
Maria Cachito Alonso. She's marvelous in her little bit part. She's working in a taco shop. They have a meet cute over the counter. He invites her on a date. They go on the date. They have the sex. He wants to claim her as his own, and then he realizes that she's actually a gang moll. She's humping around with this group of people that he's otherwise trying to crack down on.
You're left wondering about her character, and you don't know enough about it.
Right.
You know why she does what she does.
We just watch her, in a bodice ripping scene, laying some gang guy.
You think you know who I am, Danny? Huh? Do you? Fuck, man. All this is what you want, and you only want things one way. Look at me, Danny! Look at me!
Go back upstairs.
Look at me, Pac-Man! This is me too, man!
And it's unfortunate that very potentially complicated female character is not more well drawn. That has been one of the criticisms of the film. You get nothing about Hodges' wife. She appears very briefly, but you don't.
Right, they're hosting a barbecue so he can, she can meet the new partner, McGavin.
Yeah.
We see the kids kind of shuffle around. She's there to be the caregiver and domestic goddess, and she just fades into go washing dishes. The most memorable moment of this movie, I think, must be Hodges explaining to McGavin the nature of police work.
Well, these two bulls are sitting on a grassy knoll overlooking a herd of Guernseys. And the baby bull says, "Hey, Pop, let's run down and fuck one of those cows." But the papa bull says, "No, son. Let's walk down. Fuck them all."
You and I, as old heterosexual white men, can't think this is really hilarious and funny. We'll probably have some younger,
non-binary folks are going to be a little bit upset.
Non-binary folks are going, and that's kind of gross.
Right.
But
what I want to emphasize is the lesson that it visits on McGavin, because in the conclusion of the movie, when he's assigned a new partner, and here's the spoiler, Hodges will die in the course of this piece. When McGavin's given a new partner, they retrace very many of the same sets. And this young buck who he's got to deal with and train is similarly to McGavin at the beginning of Colors, running after every small criminal.
These two bulls, and they're standing on top of a mountain. And they're looking down at a bunch of cows. And then the older one says to the younger one, no, the younger one says, "Hey, Pop, let's say we run down and fuck one of them cows." And then the older one says, "Nah, son, let's walk down and fuck them all."
There were a few adults in my circle, the parents of my friends, who went to go see this movie in ensuing weeks, and I began to hear them describe this story, but I understood then that they were seeing it and perceiving it from a different angle. I was getting away with the dirty joke. That's what I thought I was doing. And what they were trying to express to one another is, isn't it true? Sometimes if you slow down and act patiently, you accomplish more. And yes, it's told through a dirty jokes circumstance, but dirty jokes often have kernels of great wisdom that we do well to remember, and this joke is fundamental to what Colors is. The code of manhood is either rush out because you're vigorous and young and strong, and my God, people are from the ages of 15 to 30. They're vigorous and young and strong, but that will fade. Being youthful is a perishable consequence of human condition. When we also add to that the attained wisdom of time and realize there's a way to use strategic thinking, our big brains, we can accomplish sometimes a lot more.
First of all, I can remember when I watched Colors with my then girlfriend Danica. I remember how both moving and horrible I thought Hodges' death scene was. It's Robert Duvall with a hole blown in his chest by a gangbanger.
I believe it's one of the young men he let go earlier in the piece.
Yes.
Which McGavin said don't do.
Right.
And this young man shoots him.
And Hodges just happens to be the guy who takes a blast right in his chest and isn't wearing a bulletproof vest or anything like that.
He's gasping for air.
And McGavin kneels over him.
Officer down!
Pull an RA unit! Christ, man. It's okay. It's just, I can't feel my legs. Okay, it's okay. I just want to lay here for a minute. Stay calm. Just call my wife. Okay, somebody get an ambulance!
There's a really wonderful performance by a Hispanic actor who is in this kind of weird mid-zone. He's neither a blood nor a crip. He's kind of a Hispanic guy on the edge of this, and it's Trinidad Silva playing Leo Frog Lopez.
Right.
And Hodges...
He'd been an informant for Hodges earlier in the piece, right?
Yes. He and Hodges have a relationship. Hodges at one point kind of treats him in this bad manipulative way where he gets information out of him and then he sends him to jail anyway. And it's clear that he's not going to go to jail for like months and months, but he's going to spend a week or two in county. And he's really pissed off about this. And there's this moment in the sweep in which Hodges is killed where you see Frog with his hands cupped behind his back, and he smiles as he listens to Hodges die. It's at that moment that you kind of realize how Hodges' entire position that, look, I'm just trying to get along with people in the community, and I'm trying to work things out, and it doesn't necessarily work out that way.
His code of honor is not honored by others.
Right.
Because he is just a cop.
Think about Dennis Hopper, the director of this film. One of the great postmodern figures in American cinema. Let's start with Easy Rider. Not a film that has a particularly happy or positive ending. Right?
He doesn't perceive the American project as a glorious achievement. It's a mess.
He went looking for America and couldn't find it anywhere. It's the tagline of the movie. You could say the exact same thing for Hodges. He's got, for Colors, that these cops, try to enforce the law, but there really isn't any law. We live in this anarchic.
It brings to mind one of the pivotal sequences, and again, I was a young person seeing this movie, as I've mentioned. One of them is the drive-by shooting. Aren't there two drive-bys in the movie?
Well,
the one I'm thinking of, we're watching a burial service at a South Central church,
right?
And the church is strafed because the parishioners are involved in the opposite gang.
What makes this day so special? What is so special, you ask? Another black boy bites the dust to which thou art returned. I knew this boy, this Robert Craig, whose mama brought him up as best she could. It wasn't the lack of love that brought this boy down. Amen. It was the scourge of drugs and gangs. And what makes this day so special is we have now declared war upon this place. Yeah. Till we see that this scourge of gang violence is driven from us. Come on now. Been bullied too long by these sawed-off gangsters. These gangbangers, as they call themselves. And now it is time for decent folk, for the people of God to start banging back. Amen. Are we afraid of these hoodlums? No. I said, are we afraid of these terrorists?
That would become part and parcel of the so-called hood films from roughly this moment through, say, the middle 1990s, with things like Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society really putting kind of a nail on the head of what that means.
And New Jack City would be another. There's a group of them that way. So
and this helps crystallize and sort of shape the foundation for these movies. I had never seen that kind of material or that kind of violence before. You already mentioned Hodges and his death, magnificently played in a very subdued way by Robert Duvall. I'm watching this movie, Colors, when it comes out in 1988, and I had just seen the Steven Seagal dumb movie, Above the Law, and I just watched Carl Weathers work a bunch of people in Action Jackson, where you are watching live-action cartoon violence. But the drawn-out capacity of this kind of violence, which is both done to somebody that you care for, and here's a disclosure, Robert Duvall has always very closely resembled my paternal grandfather. So to see him on screen, that's Grandpa Chaffin right there. And so to watch him bleed out, shocking.
Okay, I'll be ready to roll. Okay. Call my wife. Breathe.
What's interesting in his performance in Colors is he comes very close to being a leading man. You feel he's certainly the father figure, right? And he's as exactly as you describe him. That's what makes his brutal death so kind of
you
shocking.
You really
and
don't want him to
heart-wrenching.
go.
No.
You'd rather anybody on the screen be harmed.
Yeah.
Including all of the gang kingpins, which include then new, now completely established actors like Don Cheadle. I mean, he's in the MCU. But when you see him as a young performer, you realize all of the menace he can bring to being absolutely still and quiet. It's a talent to know how to do that. In the moment this movie comes out, the other Los Angeles-based period piece thinking about non-white performers from a non-white point of view would have been Stand and Deliver, which I think was the same summer season. Now that movie is, as I recall, written and directed by an Hispanic man about the story of an Hispanic man helping uplift Hispanic people. I almost see Frog as being, the wayward uncle of one of these kids who learned calculus in Jaime Escalante's classroom. So there is a way that these filmmakers, led by Hopper, tried to do their journalistic best of seeing and capturing what LA was like in this milieu. However, like you say, we are predominantly going to hang out on the shoulder of these two Irish actors who are portraying the story world from their point of view, where they leave this neighborhood every night to go home. If that's McCavin to his apartment, or if that's Hodges to his house in the valley, they leave. And that's an important reminder for what these hood films were about to become, which was predominantly black stories by black filmmakers starring black artists made by black crew members to describe themes having to do with the black underclasses of Los Angeles and other big cities in America at the time. This one is still kind of a conventionalized story. You could even talk about this as a Western, where these cowboy cops roll into this completely chaotic neighborhood and subdue it, and then go home to the civilization of their homelands at night.
Yeah, but it's not a Western because there's not the Shane-like resolution where the lone gunfighter. First of all, they're not lone gunfighters. They're
teams.
They're teams.
Right.
They're teams of police officers. Some of them are good men. Some of them are bad men who commit unnecessary. There's at least one and maybe two black characters who are killed needlessly and for no reason at all. Right. There's this great scene with this guy having this sex with his girlfriend and the police do a no knock raid as we've now learned to call it. As I was thinking about Colors and reading up about Dennis Hopper, he had photo exhibits, he had books of photographs out. There is actually a book called Colors, which is a collection of his Polaroid photographs that he took. Yeah, sort of driving around, just taking pictures as he kind of was, I think, his own location producer. Like he was thinking, because he was living in. Dennis Hopper eventually lived in a home in L.A. that was built by Frank Gehry, one of the great living architects. And so, Hopper was always immersed. He was a wild man, and he was immersed in the arts. When you watch Colors, one of the things that very kind of washed out,
the Los Angeles
sort of,
quality.
It's exactly. It's that kind of. It's the colors always kind of muted. Colors would not have been possible as an American movie made by a white director with major white actors, produced by a major film company, if rap had not suddenly become essentially one of the most popular forms of music, not the most popular form of music in the United States, and mostly consumed by white people.
Right.
It's interesting.
There's a magnificent sequence in this that puts the whole movie right into a nut.
I know what you're talking about.
It's the jail sequence when the police swallows up the Crips and the Bloods, puts them in opposite sides of the jail, and then opens up the barrier so they can run at each other and be separated by one final portcullis that keeps them apart. And we hear Ice-T.
Peace is the dream, reality is a night. My colors, my honor, my colors, my all. With my colors upon me, one soldier stands tall. Tell me, what have you left me? What have I got? Last night in cold blood, my young brother got shot.
Hopper and his editor and his cinematographer, they wanted to create this kind of rap song-like feeling of this staccato, just like a machine gun going off, right? This sort of where you're cutting and you're cutting and you're cutting.
There's an important foot race where they're tailing a bad guy and they spot him at Venice Beach. Finally, they have a punch out in the middle of a restaurant. It's a sushi restaurant at that. The other great discovery for me about this movie was this guy, Sean Penn. When I bumped into this movie at this time, I only knew him as a guy who starred in some R-rated movies I wasn't allowed to see because they were too profane or too sexy, or he was Madonna's husband. and so to watch this guy who at once is really fit. I mean, he's to this day, he remains a very fit guy. He smokes a lot, so that's ultimately going to kill him, I'm sure. But he's a very fit human. He's interesting looking. He's borderline handsome, but he's almost grotesque the way that some of his features go together. As he's aged, he's become a little bit more gnarly. Again,
he's beaky. He's beaky.
Super beaky, right?
Yeah.
But there's something really marvelous about watching him work. His pain and his anger come from a similar wellspring with his squeaky little voice. Whereas I knew something about Duvall because he had overlapped with Eastwood's career from the 70s and some of it, like Joe Kidd, I think he's in.
Tom Hagen and The Godfather. He has a whole series of, there's Tender Mercies, there's...
Great Santini.
Santini, right, of really famous performances. Sean Penn, at the time of Colors, I think is already known for two really great films. Besides obviously Fast Times at Ridgemont High and this Spicoli performance, but one is Taps.
Yeah,
with him and Timothy Hutton,
right.
and a very, very young Tom Cruise. It may be Tom Cruise's first major role, and so it's Sean Penn
and George C. Scott,
and
right?
George C. Scott. But the three young cadets who try and take over the military academy that they're about to shut down. You watch these three performances and you go, these kids are really going someplace.
They really are.
These
right.
are
they really have.
Yes. And then there is the very underappreciated Falcon and the Snowman with Timothy Hutton and Sean Penn again just giving off the scale great performances. I think by the time you hit Colors, at least in my mind, you can already see the Sean Penn of Harvey Milk, one of the greatest performances ever given.
Trying to rewrap the bow, connecting these two movies. Now that we've really digested Colors and Harakiri at some length, all male worlds, all male problems, all male difficulties transitioning from one way of life to another.
Where Harakiri goes a step farther than Colors does is that Harakiri suggests rather explicitly that it's a society that fails to take care of people in need, people who have been disenfranchised in some way or no longer just have the basic means to support themselves, it's probably going to create various kinds of violence and disruption. There's some of that suggestion in Colors, but I think that there's a level of social messaging in Harakiri that you don't quite get in Colors, and I think it would be much more obvious to Japanese people in 1962 watching, especially.
Well, so let me. I'm glad you got to this because it's something that's been worrying me, but also as an excited note, and it is.
Yeah.
Harakiri is based on the fact that we have an outmoded workforce called the samurai turned into Ronin who can't do anything else but starve, and they have a way out. They can honorably suicide. And that's considered. That's
the way out.
That's a good angle. The other part of it is this same rendered obsolescent underclass of largely non-white people in Los Angeles in Colors in the middle 1980s do not have that socially validated honorarium to escape their circumstances.
Ma'am, if you saw this, you can't...
Who can? Just get on out of my face.
What, are you going to just close your eyes and close your ears every time something like this happens? There's a kid laying over here on the ground dead,
Let's
man.
go. She has to live here.